I've got a fever and the only prescription is more sorcery. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Agent Paco. Welcome back to the channel. And today, I say this every video that I've made so far, but it's a big day. And you gotta believe me on this. It's a big day. You know, I made a video a couple months ago. My first sorcery video was unveiling that I had purchased an original painting, the Alvaline Dryads from Elvira Shakarova. Beautiful artwork from the alpha set of Sorcery. And today, painting number 2 enters the villa. That's right. I got my painting back from the framer the other day, and I'm really excited to show it to you guys. And also, I kind of want to talk about framing a piece of original art, you know, from Sorcery. You know, I've framed other things as well, and kind of wanted to make a video, you know, telling people my thought process on how to frame stuff. I got a couple questions in Discord actually after I made this video showing off this first painting, just questions about, hey, how do you go about getting like a frame like this, or like what does that whole process look like buying a piece of art from this game? So I wanted to touch on that because, you know, I want this video to be not just a humble brag of me being like, yeah, I bought a painting, but also, you know, provide some sort of information for you guys. So the first thing we had to do is brag a little bit because I have purchased another painting. This is from a different artist than my first one. It's from a different set in Sorcery entirely, but I have a really cool story with it. So a lot of people buy paintings for different reasons. You know, some people buy paintings because they really connect with the art, just specifically the piece of art strikes them. Maybe they're busting open a box and they pull a card and they're like, man, this is art unlike anything that I've ever seen before. I want to own this original piece in my home. And that's exactly what happened to me. So in October of 2024, I opened up Arthurian Legends for the first time, and I pulled a specific card. And this card, I'm going to go ahead and say it's not a very popular card. It's not a card that is seeing a lot of competitive play or anything like that. But I pulled this card in foil, and it actually blew me away. The art was so beautiful. The foiling was so amazing. And I literally saved it in my camera roll in my phone. I just sent a picture to my wife the other day of this screenshot that I had taken from October. I think it was October 13th when I opened my first box of Arthurian Legends. And I had taken a picture of this card literally because I wanted the painting. And now I get to stand here today and say, mission freaking accomplished. I was able to get the painting. So that's just a cool little story. You know, some people buy art for those reasons. Some people buy art just because maybe the artist, you just are loyal to a particular artist. They're your favorite. You want to maybe build a collection from a particular artist. That's awesome as well. Maybe you just love the card in the actual game. A cool part of collecting artwork from Sorcery is that you literally play with the cards. You know, I touched that on my last video talking about this painting, and I thought that's just a super cool idea where it's like, oh, I get to play with these cards and I get to say I own the painting. So, you know, there is a little bit of like, you know, validation in that as well. And I don't think there's anything, you know, anything wrong with owning powerful cards artwork. That's super cool. But for me, I saw this painting. I loved it. I love the artist. I'm literally collecting these artists like infinity stones, baby. If I can get like, I don't even know a number, like, I mean, a painting from every artist that's worked on Sorcery would be my ultimate goal, honestly. And I think I picked a good one. So without further ado, I've teed it up a ton. I'd like to introduce to you from Severin Pinot, all the way from France. I just received this back from the framer. This is The Power of Flight. The Power of Flight, ladies and gentlemen. Let me get a little closer. Oh, the glare is kind of terrible. But as you can see, a beautiful piece of artwork. And I have to pat myself on the back. I think the frame looks freaking sick. So it's a silver frame with a kind of dark navy blue interior. You can see the mat actually has texture on it. I don't know if it comes across, maybe this way actually. The mat has a swirl kind of texture, you know, that kind of evokes that movement from the actual painting, you know, the power of flight. And then there's a silver interior mat. So it's double matted. And I really like the silver again because with the silver, it kind of matches the foiling on the card. The foiling on this card is very silver. And I immediately wanted the painting in the frame to match, again, that memory of me pulling this card on day one and falling in love. I think this artwork is incredible. I'm really excited to own it. I don't have room to put it anywhere, I'll be honest. I mean, I'm running out of space and I only have 2 paintings. I will say, look at the difference in size. If you can see, I want to say 8 by 12 is the first painting, the Dryads, and then this is actually a 12 by 16. So a little bigger painting. And the frame, honestly, again, I'll show, the frame just makes this look massive, to be honest. So yeah, I don't really know where to put this, to be honest. I'm just going to set it right here for the time being. But I will say I want to talk a little bit about, in the second part of this video, my choice for framing. I think it's cool to kind of dive into frames, because here's the thing that I think people don't really realize when you buy an original painting. You want to put it in a cool frame. And I think that almost... the painting is the focal point. You want the painting at the end of the day, you know, the art is the reason you purchased it, but you can kind of make or break the vibe of an artwork based on what type of frame it's in. I think that there's been a couple sorcery paintings that I've seen, and again, everybody has different tastes, so this is not a knock on anything or anybody, but I've seen a couple paintings and I've been like, you know, that would not have been my first choice for a frame. I think the art could have been a little cooler if it was put in a different frame. Maybe the frame is super ornate. Maybe it's super plain. And I don't know. I really, really take a lot of like care and pride into the frame. And honestly, it's not a cheap endeavor. I'll be honest. You know, you spend a lot of money on original paintings and then you wind up spending a ton of money on a frame and it doesn't feel great, but I'm happy to do it because at the end of the day, like I said, the frame is an extension of the artwork. Like the way that the leaves, like I talked about in my last video, kind of are in the wood, the way that, like I talked about the silver, I just think this is such an ornate piece of art that it needed a kind of maybe a little extra frame, but I think it matches beautifully. So let's just put this right here. You know, the Dryads won't mind for the time being, you know, it is what it is. But I do want to talk about the frame. So when I pick this frame out, I go to a local frame shop in my city. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. Shout out to Picture This Framing. If you need a cool frame like these, I think they actually are showing this painting off on their Instagram if they haven't already. The lady in the store is super nice. It's like a family-owned business, and she, you know, I've done about 4 or 5 paintings with them at this point, and she's super, super great, helps me, you know, design everything, and was like, I have to put this on Instagram. This is so crazy. This turned out so sick. And I'm like, yes, it did. Like, are you kidding me? But I want to kind of walk you through the thought process. So when I walked in the store, you know, obviously it's just a painting. So 12 by 16, it did come with like a certificate of authenticity, but that's really all it is. It's just on like a sheet of white paper. And I took it in. I knew I wanted a matte because I kind of wanted it to be bigger, you know, 12 by 16, 8.5 by 11, which is like what this one is. They are a little small for me. I did want to give it some size. I will say this one turned out to be very large just because the frame also, you can tell, adds, I mean, I don't even know how much this is. This could be 4 inches just in the frame alone. So it did turn out to be kind of massive, but I'm okay with that. You know, you want to know what else is massive. But basically with this frame, so I walked in, you know, the people that work there at your local frame shop, if you do decide to find one, I hope they're super helpful like mine are, because they really, really, really dive in with me. They have a wall of all these different frame options. And I kind of had a vague idea, like I said, that I wanted this to be silver. That was kind of my idea. Okay, silver, maybe a little ornate. That was my vibe. So I walk in and we started putting together some frames. So I started looking at some frames. I was in between a gold, a silver, and like a more wood kind of one. And so I narrowed it down to 3. I kind of had 3 options. And then from there, I was like, okay, let's go to the matte, because that's really going to decide what type of frame I get, what matte I put around it to accent color-wise. And I always love with my mattes to match the painting in a complementary way, but also not be too plain to where what's like, what's the point? You know, sometimes you want to go plain, sometimes you want to go elaborate. With this one, like I said, I did a dual mat. So both of my paintings do have dual mats. So there's a small interior mat and then the bigger exterior, like outer mat. I knew that when I narrowed it down to the last frames, I was going a little more ornate, a little more like wild. So I knew that I wanted the matte to be a darker color. I feel like a darker color worked a lot more with the frames that I had chosen. So I kind of instantly thought of blue just because there are a lot of blues in the painting, especially here at the top. There's a lot of blues that kind of, it would be cool to fade the blue into the matte. And so that's kind of why I decided on the dark blue. I think it accents it, but doesn't overpower the painting. You know, you could go like a yellow here. You could try and do an orange or a yellow to match the stream, or maybe like the kind of like interior of the cape, or like kind of shroud that the angel or angelic soldier or whatever is like in. I just think that'd be too much. It kind of take away from the painting. Again, you want this to complement the art but not overpower the art. So I decided with the blue I wanted a little texture, so we did add the little like texture in the matte, and then I went with a silver interior because I think the silver and the silver really just paired well together. And again, it all kind of ties back to that story that I was trying to tell with the foil version of this card. So, you know, everybody kind of has a different idea. I'm sure there are a lot of people in the comments. Please leave a comment. What would you have done to a painting like this? It's a fun kind of creative exercise to think about what you would do if you had, you know, the budget to do it, if you had, you know, the creativity to do something wild. What would you have done? Would you have done this? Would you have maybe done the orange like I had said, and maybe that works out? Or maybe like, I don't know, a mint green in a weird way could have been kind of cool. That was like another color that I was trying to, but again, maybe a little too cute. Wanted to keep it a little more simple, same as like the other one with just the green, the brown, very woodland. You know, it made sense, right? So I try and make art that makes sense. And I think that framing, like I said, it's a fun part of the process. It's almost, it gives me just a rush as when I click buy on the painting, or like when I email the artist, I'd like to purchase this. You know, that's a little adrenaline rush. And taking this to the framer and then picking it up is also a sort of adrenaline rush in a really like weird way, nerdy way, because you got to be a part of the artist's work. You know, the artist made a beautiful painting and you kind of get to use your own spin on putting it in your home, you know, and like how does it fit the vibe of your home? These are sitting on my floor right now, so I don't really know how these are going to fit the vibe of my home, but we're going to figure that out. Maybe that'll be another video. Another part that I didn't touch on is the budget. So I'll be honest, framing can be really expensive. You know, I've done some frames at Michael's, like a craft store, and it's like $100 or like $50. I collect like, this is really nerdy and not on topic, but I also collect like Japanese vintage movie posters. And so I just go to Michael's, put them in like a black, like, or like a black plain frame, 50, $100, depending on the size, whatever. A small mat, 150, you know, you're not really breaking the bank too much, you know, but with these type of paintings, you know, you're spending a lot of money on a sorcery painting, just being completely honest. Spend a lot of money on these two paintings. And so it's like, I wanted a frame that could kind of like weigh with the art, you know, and it was a little expensive. I'll be honest. Both of these frames, like $600 to $800, $1,000, like on the high end for some frames. That's like what it's going to cost to do a frame like this. What affects the cost? The more elaborate the frame, the more expensive it is, obviously. The matte, the texture, that was more expensive. Having two mattes, an interior and an outer matte, that kind of doubles the matte price, you know, and then you've got the glass. So you've got, at my local frame store, they offer 3 different glass options. There's like a standard glass that's just like a regular glass, pretty like reflective in a way. This was actually at my frame store too. This is just a print, but this has the standard glass, and you can kind of, I don't know if you can tell right now, but it's more reflective. With these, I opted for the more expensive museum glass, so it doesn't have a glare until you like put it in a really weird angle. But like, as you can see, there's not much of a glare. I have natural light coming in here, and you're not getting too much of a glare, and it's an extra $100, but to me that is so worth it because I hate a glare so much. So I was like, whatever, just run it up, you know, if we're gonna do it, let's do it big. So I say that literally just to give you guys a realistic expectation. I have seen some frames from people like Mike from Collector Art House. that did cost like $1,000, and it's a beautiful frame. But if you don't have the budget for that, maybe that affects maybe your creativity a little bit. It's like, okay, we got to wheel down the budget, maybe a couple $100s. How can we make that happen? And again, that's the advantage of having a local store that really is willing to pour into you. You're giving them money, so I would hope they pour into you a little bit and help you with that. Is give them a budget. Say, listen, I can't go over this amount of money, and they're going to be able to work with you. So I just wanted to give a little tips on how I decided to frame this piece, my previous piece, and hopefully a couple more pieces coming up in the pipeline. Wink, wink. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoy sorcery art as much as I do because I'm a huge fan. I just want to say before I end this video, I have a huge sorcery art related project coming out. My deadline in my head is by SCGCon Houston. My last video, I'm going to Houston in mid-October. So by mid-October, I guarantee I will have a new YouTube video for you guys in the next month explaining this massive art project I have been working on for the past couple months. It's been a labor of love. I'm really excited. As you can tell, I'm super passionate about this type of stuff. So if you care, drop a subscribe. Please leave a comment, like the video. It really helps, the algorithm gods or whatever on YouTube. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Hey, go buy a painting. It's freaking fun.